get ready to say goodbye to 2023, we got to chat about some of the biggest pop culture moments of the year. We have our friend Michael Corrigan here to give us a big recap. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh my gosh, of course. There's no better way to round out the year than to chat with you.
And I feel like that sweatshirt right there is the perfect way to recap 2023.
I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist.
I mean, let's go ahead and start with that. Barb, that was such a big moment for movies. Um, the movie made over $1 billion. People were dressing up. I mean, it was a big moment. Talk a little bit about what that movie meant for you.
Well, it's twofold. One, I think the biggest thing specifically about Barbenheimer is really that people will go to the movies if they are given a reason to go to the movies. And I think that as someone who has always loved the experience of doing a movie theater, that industry really suffered in the pandemic when things streaming just really kind of took over. And I think there was a lot of conversation, speculation about, Hollywood would rebound and what the theaters would look like moving forward. And I think that that was so exciting to see because I think that when given a unique viewing experience, particularly one that lends itself to that type of environment of big screen and seeing something in person rather than just, holed up on your couch at home, um, I think it can really kind of create a moment and allows various types of fan communities to celebrate, which is something, you see with people dressing up and really kind of getting into the larger cultural conversations about that. And I think, what I'm really excited to see is like in the wake of that now, there is such an opportunity, I think, for people to pull notes from that to decide what type of movies they create moving forward. And I don't think it's necessarily I don't think lightning strikes the same place twice. So I don't think it's about trying to just recreate Barbie or recreate Oppenheimer. I think it really is an opportunity to like take a moment, stop with the incessant superhero movies because those are just continuing to trend lower and lower. I think that people are over them. And I think that when you take even long established IPs like Barbie and tell it in a unique and modern and thought-provoking way, people will come out in droves. So I hope that it just really kind of opens Pandora's box of opportunity for movies for the future in a way that is exciting and not just trying to then replicate the success of those two movies specifically with things that seem identical and not original.
I mean, one of the things that I loved is that I went opening weekend to go see the movie, and so many people were dressed up. People went with groups of friends. People like almost like they were going to the Era store or to the Renaissance store. That people were like in their full like they planned their outfit out as well as going out with their friends. And even if I went to a couple of different shopping centers, there was groups of friends all dressed in pink, and you knew where they were going right after they were eating, right
Yeah.
after they were at a certain store. And I just thought that was such a cool moment because we haven't experienced that in a long time.
It really, really was, and I obviously have a Barbie bias since we were lucky enough for work. We did the publicity behind the Malibu Barbie cafes that opened up in Chicago and New York as the films were coming out. And Barbie is something that I've always really loved and really resonated with since I was a child. And it was really cool to see, even at the restaurants, there were just as many adults that came as kids. It was not just a family experience. It was something that like people felt a connection to across so many different touch points. And I think that now, specifically because the Barbie brand is so much more about inclusivity and allowing people of all walks of life to see themselves as Barbie and to associate themselves with Barbie. I think it just ticked all the boxes and it was a phenomenon.
Well, I mean, especially with that pop up coming up to Chicago and hitting several cities, this year. What was it like from your perspective to see Barbie just make such a big impact and not just see families or women or young girls, but just to see like everybody going to celebrate Barbie? Like
It
this
was
whole summer was Barbie. Like let's just face it, yeah.
It was really special. It was a really fun project. It really happened at exactly the right moment, and because it was the word on everyone's lips over the summer to play a part in that and to be able to work in tandem with the launches of those movies and and get to work with the team at Mattel behind the restaurants was really special. It was definitely like a bucket list, pun intended, moment for me to date. It was such a special project to work on.
Let's talk a little bit about Barbenheimer. Any whatever genre of movies that you liked, there was a reason for you to go to the theater. And then, of course, whenever there's a hashtag, it just becomes bigger and bigger. And no matter what movie you were going to see, or if you're going to see both, it became a conversation of let's see this one first, and let's see that one after. And are you going to see this one again? And how are you dressing up? I mean, even that was just it was like I wanted one day, and I wish I would have done this just to go sit like outside the movie theater and just see the crowds coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's when something taps into the zeitgeist that much, it's really awesome to see how the halo effect of each of them impacted each other, and I think opened up the lines for different audiences to want to see something that they wouldn't necessarily associate as, being of interest. So I think that it's cool to see those conversations happening and then to see that experience again spill out into real life, which is something we've all like really been ready for again after the past couple of years. I think it was like right time, right place, right concepts.
Right concept. Another thing that we talked about this whole summer was the Eras tour. I mean, that was the last time that we chatted on our podcast, but just how big that tour became. I mean, she grossed over $1 billion. The big, a huge tour brought over $4.6 billion to the economy. It was the friendship releases. It was the 44 songs. It was the over 3 hour show. I mean, it was everything.
It was literally everything. I mean, I personally went 3 times. I got to go in Arizona, I went in Chicago, and I went in Los Angeles as well. So technically, if you saw the movie, I was in the movie because we were there the night that they filmed it. You might not see my face, but you certainly I was in the crowd. So I say I'm in the movie. That's what I like to say. But I mean, yeah, I talk about like something that, whether you love Taylor or hate Taylor, you certainly could not avoid Taylor this year. And I think that tour was truly next level in terms of how it captured the social conversation, brought people together, and yeah, really boosted the economy in a lot of different cities. And I think for me, what I think is most fascinating about the year of 2023 and how it pertains to Taylor is because I have been a fan of hers for a very long time. So when you're a fan of something, you get very close to it. So it's very hard for you to understand someone who wouldn't necessarily understand the pulse of that person because you know literally every news item that comes out on them. And I really think that she really expanded her fan base, I think, over the course of the past few years in a way that I think people weren't necessarily aware of. Because I think that when she first kind of switched over to pop music, I think she kind of lost her street cred a little bit as a songwriter with Reputation and Lover specifically. Like, I think people kind of thought she was like getting lost in the sound a little bit. And I think when she did Folklore and Evermore, she really kind of reclaimed her ability to be a noted and really powerful songwriter. And I think that showcased the true diversity in her music. And then I think when she launched Midnights, that was kind of her way of like marrying the two. It was like, I have to figure out a way to be able to create pop music, but not at the loss of the songwriting. And I think that album really kind of merged those two worlds. So then I think it was like she had evolved her fan base. And then I think it was just this mixture of like supply and demand, that there was a lot of interest around it. It was hard to get tickets that started feeding on each other. Then there's the resale. Then it becomes almost this like, gold rush of an event.
Oh, absolutely.
Then you kind of feel like when something becomes big enough to be like a large moment, you don't want to miss out on that moment. And I think for me, I even witnessed that directly. Like when my mom told me she went and saw the movie in the theaters, I was like, I just would have never imagined that. Or I had people who are, I'm friends with who were not necessarily I would consider fans of hers that were being like, oh, like, how was the concert? I really want to go. I feel like this is a tour that we need to see in our lifetime. This is going to be one of the tours of our lifetime. So to miss out feels like you were missing a cultural moment. And it was awesome just to see because the execution of it was insane. The staging was just so next level. And I think that you can just tell that she is someone who is so in command of her image and her stage presence and what she brings to the table. And I think that there are certain types of people that can just handle being iconic celebrities, because I think that, as you know, celebrity brings a large amount of power, but also brings a large amount of isolation. And I think that it takes a really certain type of person to handle that. And I think that she was built for that. I think she was built to be as famous as she is. And I think that as long as she continues to play her cards right, I think she will be around for a very, very long time.
And speaking, so Loverfest didn't happen, and then she made two albums during the pandemic, and then Midnight's came out. So if she was going to announce like a Midnight tour, I think so many fans would have been upset that, hey, we've been waiting for this, a tour for several years, and this gave everybody who had never seen her, who's been a fan of her since the beginning, someone who became a fan of hers during the pandemic, and just who people who have just enjoyed her music throughout her career. She's like, let me just lay it all out on the table, and it 100% worked because not only were people trying to get the tickets and you saw the insane prices, but you saw the people outside the venues singing and gathering and friendship bracelets. And it was such a cool thing to see because I would say, like, not even if, let's just say you weren't a fan at all, but just to see that much positivity in the world and people getting together and saying hi and wanting to go see this artist together, like, it was like Beatlemania, One Direction, like this New Kids on the Block, like, whatever your pop group was, like, this was that moment for 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
As far as anything that could top it, I mean, because I'm trying to think, like, she made over $1 billion. This did a huge boost for the economy. Then the movie came out, that did record numbers. And I assume a lot of artists are not going to follow that of like, I don't know if she's doing it, but I'm assuming like an Adele who's only playing in Las Vegas. Like, you can't make it out to Vegas, possibly show, her concert in the theater, or other artists who are now going to be like, how do we do this so that it lives on past whatever dates we do?
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point. It's not necessarily about trying to beat or even match Taylor, but it's about this is a new opportunity to bring again people to the movie theater. And it showed with both Taylor and Beyonce that it can be done. And if you have experiences that people weren't able to get tickets to because they sold out, or frankly, concerts are very expensive. So not everyone is able to afford to go to a concert. So to be able to spend $20 to go see a high glossy movie version of the concert of the person that they might be obsessed with but didn't get to see the show, and also have it feel like an experience, like with both of those films, people were very much living their best lives in the theater. And I think that, yeah, this is I think kind of the tip of the iceberg to see, how that's going to be replicated in the future, because I think there's so much opportunity for other artists to jump on board.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to go see the movie, I didn't get a chance to see the tour. I was one of those people who got shut out. I was trying and trying online to try to get tickets as much as possible. I didn't do it, or I didn't get any tickets. But seeing the movie, like, I was just like, oh my goodness, I can only imagine what this was like live. But then also seeing all the people in the front singing along and the families going together. I mean, I went on a Friday night and seeing families and young kids with their friends. I was like, this is a unique experience that people don't necessarily get to, like, go to the movies and let their parents let them stay out, maybe a little past their bedtime, dance in front of the screen, meet other people. Like, it was such a cool moment. And like, I think like, I just like treasure that. Like, I was enjoying myself, but I was also enjoying that so many other people were also having an amazing time.
I couldn't agree more. It was a full experience, and I'm happy it was, because the world is a very heavy place, and I think that pop culture should be an escape. I think it should be fun, and I think it should make us happy. So I think that whether we're seeing a concert in real life or in a movie theater, I think that we should be allowed to have that time to celebrate.
This was also the year of celebrity tell-alls. I mean, we're waiting for some big books from Prince Harry, Britney Spears, Paris Hilton, Jada Pinkett Smith. They all delivered some bombshell information. Was there one that you were waiting for the most? Did you read any of them? I see you smiling, so I'm assuming that
I think you already know the answer to that question. Because my love for Taylor aside, Britney Spears will always be my number one just favorite singer who has been, for better or worse, according to my husband, formative in my life. And I will always hold her on the pedestal with which she so rightly deserves. And, I think with her book, because in a lot of ways, Britney, in the height of her fame, was very much part of that kind of last bastion of celebrity smoke and mirrors, where image was almost entirely dictated by the media, and social media did not exist in the way that it does now, where celebrities had the opportunity to shape and tell their own narrative through their own words. So Britney really kind of, the bulk of her career was told through, the lens of mainstream and then tabloid media, when the paparazzi fame, when that whole machine really kicked up, kind of took her down. And, while she does have a very active social media now, I think that coming off of her conservatorship for 13 years, I think that not only her fan base, but I think the public really wanted to hear her story in her own words, because she had had her words either taken from her or not be able to be said for such a long time. And as someone who really um, was talked about in a lot of different ways and in a lot of negative ways. And I think sometimes still is. And I think that, in my opinion, is still part of the greater problem um, with celebrity culture sometimes. It was hard to read as a fan, in parts. I think because I've done a really good job of separating like Britney in the height of her fame and Britney and her personal struggles as two separate things. And the book, I feel like, really kind of brought a link and a bridge to show you how what happened in her fame also brought her to that place of having personal struggles, and what really kind of happened behind the curtain. There's a lot of family issues in there, a lot of relationship issues, amidst other things. They don't ever say it. But she talks about like how her grandmother, was bipolar and had all this stuff. And, I sometimes think that maybe that is something that she herself suffers from, and has never just been, fully on the record. So I was, I was very excited to read that. It was hard, but I also, at the end of it, felt like I'm really happy she had the opportunity to do that. I felt a lot of closure for myself as a fan in general. And if she ever decides to do anything in entertainment or music ever again, I will be there to support her every single day. But you know what? If it's just the time now for us to quote leave Britney alone, I'm okay with that.
That Chris Crocker quote will live on forever.
Ever iconic.
And the other thing too about Britney is that she was one of those people that people made speculations about her relationships, her relationship with her kids, her family life, herself. But she hasn't given an interview, so it was like people made up things or people just assumed things. But this is the first time we got to hear her side of it, and we got to hear what she was going through, because so many times you see either a picture in a magazine or online, or you see a video and you just assume, oh, this must be happening, or you assume something is going on without necessarily hearing it from her, because whether she didn't want to do any interviews or her management were like, you were not going to do any interviews. We haven't heard her speak and give any type of interview in a very, very long time. So this was a long time coming. And even with like Prince Harry, the royal family doesn't do sit down interviews and give information that is like so like secretive. And I think that was especially those two big
Yeah.
memoirs from this year. Was these were these two like institutions, I'll call Britney an institution, or the royal families, that you never knew the secrets behind them. You just kind of made your own assumptions of what was happening. So it was strange to see it in 2023, both of these come out, because these were two things that we talk about in pop culture that like we get a little bit of an insight to.
Yeah. And such a lightning rod for conversation, which is a good segue because I actually have a really funny Prince Harry memoir story. So when the book came out, I actually was in London visiting friends of mine that were living there. And on my flight back, there was mechanical errors. So we ended up having this crazy 8-hour delay on our flight back. So I'm sitting there in the airport. I'm so bored. And then I'm walking around. I see that the memoir was out. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally sitting in the airport. Like, I need to start reading the Prince Harry book. So I start reading it for like the last like 2 hours that I was waiting there. And as we're going to leave, like the London airport, they always put you on these like little like kind of bus like segways. Like you leave the terminal, they put you on these little bus things, and it like buses you to the plane. And so when we were doing that, I like had my book like in my hand, and I forget there was like traffic or something that we were on the bus thing longer than you would be typically. And like no joke, like we're like parked, we're kind of all standing there. It's a mix of like Americans and British people. Someone next to me is like, "Oh, like, oh, Prince Harry, you're reading the Prince Harry book. Like, what do you think?" So we kind of start talking about it, and then you could just feel the conversation start to spread. I'm not exaggerating, throughout the entire bus. It was like 30 people, and I felt like everyone was then talking about the royal family. And that was just so funny to me to like one be in London. For that, going back to America, which very much just like feels like the Harry arc. But I was like, for me, it was like, wow, yeah, people really have very defined opinions on this. And it was fun to just like see that in real time kind of happen. It was such a cool moment. And obviously, as like a publicist, like I love seeing how like information and buzz can like spread amongst people. So to be able to observe that was just so fun.
Especially too, I'm assuming that, with the book just coming out, people wanting to talk about it, but maybe in and having that delay and opened it up, that it's like, okay, you're talking about it. Well, I want to talk about it, and I want to talk about it. And before you know it, they should have just given you a microphone.
I know, right? I could just like led like a TED talk at the front of the bus. You know, I would have done it too.
I know I would have flown to London so I could flow back with you to hear all about this. Something else everyone was talking about, Scandival this year. So whether you watch Vanderpump Rules or not, it became every social media feed, every topic of conversation was about, this relationship between, Ariana and Tom. And then, Raquel came in, and like, it was just crazy how this thing just like snowballed and became this huge pop culture moment.
Insane. Like I think it was exciting, and it was like both exciting and fascinating for me. Exciting because I absolutely love Vanderpump Rules. I actually had a Vanderpump Rules themed birthday party pre-pandemic. It was like my favorite birthday I ever did. And I was excited because the show really had kind of been on a decline for a couple seasons, and in my opinion was probably going to be on the chopping block to get canceled, because that was a show that was about people young and working in a restaurant and the drama that ensued. And as they grew up, I think the drama became less organic and felt more forced because they had to keep up this persona that they weren't really upholding anymore because they weren't 22 working in a restaurant anymore. So when this happened, this was like, whoa, like yanked the carpet out from under people. No one saw it coming. This was the longest standing relationship on the show. And I think it was so fascinating because reality TV, while is so popular, I feel like is such sometimes like the cockroach of society sometimes, where it's like it's there and like, but it doesn't ever like, it rarely breaks into what I would say is like the mainstream conversation, and it's like to see how much this like blew up, especially for a show that had been around for 10 seasons, and like how much people vehemently had opinions about it. I mean, when Ariana and Lisa were at like the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I was like, this is nuts. And obviously she parlayed that into Dancing with the Stars, and she's on Broadway now. Um, so I thought that was so interesting. And I think what made it fun how they did it is like it introduced a new way to also consume reality TV, and it's kind of like the Easter egg thing that Taylor Swift does so well. But it was like once we knew that this had happened and that the show was like marching towards something, it almost was like people became obsessed with looking for Easter eggs in the show to try and find out like were there clues that insinuated that they were having an affair before it even broke in the world of the show. And um, it's so funny too, because yeah, I talk about like expanding your fan base. Like, I think that it was something that made so much noise that it made people just want to tune in. We actually, in our my building, we have a text chain called Vanderwatch Rules, and most of our building had never seen the show. And there was two units in our building where we are obsessed with Vanderpump Rules, and we basically convinced our most of our building every Tuesday night now has been watching Vanderpump Rules from the very beginning. And the people who had not watched the show don't know the details of the nitty gritty behind Scandal. They know it happens, but they don't know why. And it's just so funny because I think that that was something that really brought in people into the show like it never had before, and really kind of gave it, a second shelf life. I'm interested to see how the next season will be, because I think you can't possibly uh top that, and I think if it then just kind of peaks and then fizzles out again because the show as itself still kind of needed to be retooled a little bit, I'm fine with that. But as a longtime lover of the show and still loved it, even people are like, oh God, that show's awful now. It's so boring, this or that. To like have it like shoot back up in popularity again made me really excited, because I was like, this is why I love this show.
But I think also too, I think it touched people because people had such a strong opinion because Ariana and Tom were together for so long, and here comes a friend that you would think if a couple was together for that long period of time that they would have some type of understanding. And obviously, a lot of people put their own emotions and their own experiences onto the characters they see on TV. But seeing this kind of blow up and seeing Ariana confront Tom at the reunion and seeing the strong words that she was using, I think a lot of people were feeling those emotions. Like, I wish I could go back to that person in my life and say X, Y, or Z. And I think it just tapped into so many people, their inner core of like, this has held me back. This is the reason why I might be seeking, some therapy. This is the reason why I can't move on from my ex. I think it just kind of hit that chord with so many people. And that's why it became such this huge moment.
Catharsis for
Yeah.
everyone. And I do,
Yeah.
I agree. We as a culture, I think when we have been with someone for, 10 seasons, we do in a way feel like we know them and we have our respective opinions about them. And I think that's what's so interesting about reality TV, is that it's not a character at the end of the day, even if they are playing a character somewhat for the show, it is still real people, and I think that's why it's interesting too that now there's kind of this whole wave of like the reality reckoning, that Bethany Frankel's been trying to kind of drum up against Bravo. Because, while obviously people sign up for a show to be on TV, like no one is forcing them to do that. I do think it's interesting to think about, how the likeness of people on a show is used by the network for profit or other things. And I think because it is something that is so emotionally tied to our culture and can be vastly profitable. I mean, look at BravoCon and how much that has blown up since it started. I do think that there will be a sense probably of, I don't want to liken it to, like the SAG strikes that happen, but I do think there will start to be more guardrails that will be put in to, I think, protect people a little bit more. And then also to allow people who, in this case, are the talent, to be able to kind of profit themselves off of their like list and not just have it be the network profiting off it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess maybe to leave things on a positive note, we saw Ariana and Tom break up, but Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift got together during this year. I mean, that was, as far as like celebrity couples, I can't think of a bigger one that happened. Maybe Kylie Jenner and Timothy Chalamet, maybe a distant second, but I was like, Travis and Taylor, I think that was just like the biggest celebrity couple of the year.
Just talk about like two people who are so well known in their respective lanes coming together. Like if they ever got married, to me, that is the closest you will see to like an American royal wedding. I think like just there, it's because they're so, like they brought a lot of different audiences together, I mean, I'm not a sports person, so like I didn't even know who Travis Kelce was until she started dating him, and I dressed up as him for Halloween this year. So it's like so funny or how Taylor fans started watching the NFL, and it's very public. I think when I think about her and the year that she's had, and especially how this like relationship really kind of punctuated the end of the giant years she had with the tour. When I think about it through my publicist lens, I really hope that she's going to be touring throughout Europe and Asia next year, but I kind of hope that she takes next year to kind of like take a beat on American culture a little bit, because I do think that overexposure is still very real. And I think that she obviously is much more famous than she was the last time she had kind of like a public backlash moment. But I do think that, in American culture, I think we do love to build someone up only to tear them down, to build them up, to tear them down again. And I just think that at this point, she doesn't really need any more attention. So I think that it's like, and I'm a big proponent of like, it's not just what you're saying, but it's also why and like when. And like, do you need this? Do you need to be making noise right now? So I'm kind of hoping that she will, quote, go away for a little bit. As much as I love her. And I'm saying that like that's me giving my professional opinion. As a personal fan, I will consume every dollar opportunity that I have for professionally. I hope she gets the message to kind of go away for a little bit because then I think she can come back and really make a lot of noise again. But I don't think there is any reason for her to have as there's no way she can top this year, but I think
Yeah.
she shouldn't even try next year. I think she should let the cards fall a little bit.
Yeah, and what I love too is that she had this huge year with the tour and with the movie, and then her off time, she's just like, I'm gonna go hang out and see my man. Playing football. I'm gonna hang out with the family, and like she's relaxing. She's bringing her friends out. Like I love that it's not just all work. I love that she's just kind of like enjoying the moment. Like I got to go back on tour, but I'm gonna go and like go to all these stadiums that like probably played in, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
go watch these games.
And she said it in Time magazine. She was like, we're a couple. We support each other. He plays football, so I go to his games, you know? And I almost think that that was kind of like a thinly veiled dig at Joe, her ex-boyfriend, because I think their relationship was so private by his choosing. And I think he was very threatened by her success at the end. And I think that, you know, as a gay man, I'm never going to try and understand the male female dynamic of relationship and gender roles. But I think that in order, Taylor needs a man who is not threatened by her success, who will celebrate her success and be happy with his own success. And I feel like, well, I don't want to force this narrative on them. I kind of feel like he might be that for her.
I hope so. I mean, I like the two of them together, and
Yeah,
you
he's
know, I
also so hot. So, I mean, I literally like that's what I've also like said to Cope. They're like, you just like him because he's Taylor's boyfriend. I was like, for the record, if he wasn't so attractive, I probably would not have gone as him for Halloween.
Truth be told, Michael, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for recapping some of the biggest moments of 2023. We'll see what 2024 brings us. Maybe we'll see what maybe there'll be some more Taylor and Travis news that we might be able to. We have to stop. We not wait till the end of the year and
Stay
have chat about.
tuned. Can't wait to see what next year brings. Thanks for having me, though, to talk about everything 2023.